My name is Emma, I'm 23 years old. The message came late in the evening, around 10:47 p.m. My phone buzzed once, and when I looked down, I saw it was from Mom. The woman who had never once asked me for anything, not even when she needed it the most. It was a simple message, only a few words, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. Beta, the electricity bill is overdue. They said they'll cut it off tomorrow. Please help if you can. Those words blinked on the screen, small and fragile, yet they struck like thunder in my heart. My mother had never been the kind of woman who asked for help. She was the one who gave help, even when she had nothing left to give. To see her plead, even through a text, was something that shook me to the core. I could almost imagine her as she wrote it, sitting in that old wooden chair by the dim light of her phone, her glasses slipping down her nose, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. She must have stared at the screen for a long time before pressing send, weighing her pride against her desperation. My mother was never one to complain. She endured storms in silence, pain without words, and hunger with a smile. For her to finally ask for help meant she had reached a breaking point. As I read her message again and again, a wave of memories flooded my mind, the kind that ache, the kind that remind you of every quiet sacrifice a parent makes. I remembered the years when she worked double shifts at the textile factory, coming home late with tired eyes and blistered hands. She would still ask me, "Did you eat, Beta?" before even taking a sip of water. I remembered how she stitched my torn school uniform under the weak glow of a kerosene lamp because we couldn't afford to buy a new one. Back then, the lack of electricity wasn't an emergency, it was normal. We lived with it. But through all those dark nights, she never complained. That's why her message hit me so hard. For my mother, asking for help wasn't just a request. It was surrender. It meant she had run out of strength to carry the burden alone. I knew she must have tried everything first. Maybe she went to the neighbors. Maybe she skipped a few meals. Maybe she even prayed, whispering to God in the silence, "Please, help me." And when nothing else worked, she finally turned to me. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I wasn't crying because of the bill or the money. I was crying because I could feel the emotion behind those few words. The mixture of love, fear, and helplessness that only a mother could feel. She wasn't just worried about the electricity. She was worried about being a burden, about asking too much, about showing weakness in front of the very child she had raised to be strong. It's strange how one message can change everything. Until that moment, I thought I understood my mother's sacrifices, but I hadn't. I had seen her strength, her determination, her unbreakable spirit, but I had never seen her vulnerability. That night, I saw it for the first time, and it humbled me. It made me realize that even the strongest hearts sometimes whisper for help. As I sat there in the glow of my phone screen, I felt a lump in my throat. The distance between us, the miles, the years, the city lights, suddenly felt unbearable. I wanted to be there with her, to take her hand and tell her she didn't need to carry everything alone anymore. She had carried me all my life. Now it was my turn to carry her. That simple message wasn't just a plea for help with a bill. It was a mother's quiet way of saying, "I've done all I can, now I need you." And in that single moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes love doesn't roar, sometimes it whispers through trembling fingers, typing a simple message at 10:47 p.m. When I read my mother's message, the world seemed to go quiet around me. It was late at night, and the city outside my window buzzed faintly with life. Cars passing, distant laughter, the hum of electricity. Electricity, the very thing my mother was about to lose. Her words lingered on the screen, small but heavy. "Please help if you can." I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, torn between love and helplessness. My wallet sat on the small wooden desk beside me, holding exactly Vern 500 rupees, the last of what I had until my next paycheck. That money wasn't much, but in that moment it meant survival. It meant my own electricity bill, a few meals, and maybe enough to get through the next week. But now, with one message, that money had become something more. It was a question of love, sacrifice, and choice. My mind raced with conflicting thoughts. I wanted to send it all to her instantly. My heart screamed that she needed it more. Yet my mind whispered back, "What about you? What will you do for the next 7 days?" The voices collided inside me, each louder than the other, and I felt something break within. I leaned back on my chair and closed my eyes. I could picture her house, the small living room with its faded curtains, the clock ticking on the wall, the chair by the window where she always sat. I imagined the dark corners, the quiet hum of the ceiling fan that might soon stop spinning, and my mother sitting alone, waiting, worrying. She must have felt embarrassed to even send that message. I could almost see her praying I would understand her pain without judgment. I opened my eyes and looked around my own room. It wasn't much, just a mattress, a fan, a bulb, and a cracked window. But it was mine, my little world of independence that I had fought so hard to build. For years I had been working, saving, and trying to stand on my own feet so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone. But now the roles were reversed. The woman who had once been my protector was reaching out to me for help. The irony stung deep. The thought of not helping her felt unbearable, yet the fear of my own struggle loomed just as large. I knew what hunger felt like. I knew what darkness felt like. I had spent enough nights wondering if I would ever make it in the city, and now I stood at a crossroads, between self-preservation and selflessness. It wasn't just a financial decision, it was an emotional storm, one that tested the very limits of love. I picked up my phone again and read her message for the 10th time. I could almost hear her voice, soft, tired, yet filled with the same love it always carried. That voice had once comforted me when I cried, cheered for me when I failed, and whispered prayers when I didn't even believe in myself. How could I possibly say no to her now? Tears filled my eyes before I even realized it. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about something deeper, a bond built on years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and silent prayers. My heart ached knowing she must have hesitated before typing that message, her pride fighting with her desperation. I imagined her sighing deeply before pressing send, and that single thought broke me. The conflict inside me grew heavier with every passing minute. I felt guilt for even hesitating, shame for thinking twice. But that's what love does. It doesn't always come easy. Sometimes it hurts, it confuses, it pulls you in two directions at once. Finally, I realized there was no real choice to make. There was only love, and love, no matter how hard, always gives. My tears blurred the screen as I opened my banking app. My hand trembled as I entered the amount. It was everything I had. But I knew, deep down, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it. In that moment, the conflict inside me faded. I chose her. The woman who had always chosen me. As I sat on the edge of my bed, torn between what I could give and what I had to keep, a memory suddenly rose in my mind, one that had been buried deep, but not forgotten. It was from a night long ago, back when I was just a child, small enough to still believe my mother could fix anything in the world. It had been raining hard that evening. The kind of rain that drowns out every sound, that seeps through old rooftops and turns the air cold and heavy. The wind howled through the cracks of our little home, and every few minutes, lightning flashed through the thin curtains, lighting up our room for a second before plunging us back into darkness. The electricity had gone out hours earlier, and I remember crying quietly under the thin blanket, afraid of the dark. I was only 9 years old, but I still remember how it felt. The way the shadows stretched across the walls, the sound of thunder rolling above, and the emptiness of the house without light. My mother, tired from a long day of work, came and sat beside me. She didn't have a flashlight or a candle that could last the night. But she had something stronger, her presence. She took my small hand in hers and said softly, "It's okay, Beta. The lights will come back soon. Until then, we'll make our own light." She tore a piece of old newspaper, rolled it into a stick, and lit it with a matchstick she had saved for emergencies. The tiny flame flickered weakly, dancing against the wind, but in that moment, it felt like the brightest light in the world. She held it carefully, her face glowing in the amber light, her eyes calm and full of love. She started humming a lullaby, the same one she used to sing when I was a baby. I remember leaning against her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her arm against mine. She was tired. I could hear it in her breath, yet she never complained. Her sari was damp from the rain, her hair uncombed, but she still smiled as if everything was perfect. I didn't realize it then, but she was keeping me safe, not just from the dark outside, but from the darkness that poverty and hardship could bring into a child's heart. Hours passed like that. The flame eventually died, but she stayed awake. I remember waking up later in the night to find her fanning me with an old newspaper, trying to keep the mosquitoes away. The sound of rain was softer by then, but she hadn't slept. Her eyes were heavy, her back bent from exhaustion, but she kept humming softly, her voice weaving through the silence like a fragile thread of light. That night became etched into my heart. Even years later, I could still hear her voice in my head every time life went dark. "We'll make our own light." She had meant it literally that night, but I understood it differently now. My mother had always been the light, not because she never faced darkness, but because she never let it win. Sitting in my small room now, that memory hit me like a wave. I realized that while I had been scared of losing electricity for a few days, my mother had spent her life lighting up mine. With her sacrifices, her courage, and her love, she had taught me how to live in darkness without losing hope. As I thought of that night, I felt my heart ache with both gratitude and guilt. She had been my light when I couldn't even see. And now, as her lights threatened to go out again, it was my turn to be hers. That old memory didn't just remind me of the past. It gave me my answer in the present. The child she once comforted in the dark had grown up, and now it was time for me to light her world the same way she had once lit mine. The memory of that rainy night lingered in my mind, soft and haunting. It was as if my mother's voice was still whispering to me through the years, reminding me that love isn't measured by how much we have, but by how much we give when we have almost nothing left. I stared at my phone, her message still glowing on the screen. My chest felt tight. I knew what I had to do, but the weight of the decision pressed heavily on my heart. I glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall. Rent was due in 5 days. My next paycheck wouldn't come for another week. My bank balance was low enough to make my hands tremble just thinking about it. I had 500 rupees left. That money was supposed to cover my meals, my transport to work, and the little things that kept me going each day. It wasn't much, but for someone like me, living paycheck to paycheck, it was survival. And yet, none of that seemed to matter anymore. All I could think about was my mother sitting in her small house, perhaps looking out the window at the flickering streetlights, wondering if she'd have light tomorrow. I imagined her praying silently, maybe regretting sending that message, thinking I'd be angry or burdened. The thought tore me apart. How could I ever be angry at the woman who gave me everything? Her strength, her peace, her youth, her dreams. So I could have mine. The decision was simple yet not easy. I picked up my wallet, opened it, and looked at the few notes inside. My reflection stared back at me from the small mirror on the wall. I saw exhaustion, fear, and hesitation. But behind it all I saw love. The kind of love that doesn't need to think twice once it remembers why. My hand trembled as I opened the banking app on my phone. Each tap felt heavier than the last, like I was letting go of something vital. I entered her account number and the amount. All of it. I hesitated for a brief second, not because I doubted what I was doing, but because I realized how symbolic this moment was. This was more than money. This was a return, a circle completing itself. She had once given me everything she had, even when she had nothing. Now, it was my turn to do the same. Before pressing send, I closed my eyes and whispered, "This is for you, Mom." The confirmation screen appeared, and I felt both relief and a strange emptiness wash over me. My balance now read 0. For a moment, panic tried to rise in my chest, but then something stronger replaced it. Peace. A deep, quiet peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was the peace that comes when you know you've done the right thing, even if it costs you something. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was her. "Betta, I just paid the bill." "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." I read her message and felt my throat tighten. My eyes filled with tears, but they weren't of sadness. They were of gratitude, because in that single moment, I realized something profound. Love isn't comfortable. It's not easy or convenient. It's often made of sleepless nights, quiet sacrifices, and choices that hurt. But it's also the most beautiful thing we can ever give. That night, I sat in my dark room, my own lights now flickering out, but instead of feeling empty, I felt something glow inside me, a warmth that came not from electricity, but from love. I had sent away my last bit of comfort, but in return I had lit my mother's world, and in that gentle darkness, I finally understood what she had meant all those years ago. Light isn't something you wait for. It's something you become for the people you love. When the transaction went through and the small confirmation message appeared on my screen, I sat there in silence, staring at it. My heart was beating fast, not from fear this time, but from something deeper, a strange mix of relief and emotion. I had done it. I had sent her the money. The same money I had guarded for my own needs now belonged to her. The screen felt warm in my hands, but it was the warmth in my heart that truly spread through me. I didn't know if she would see it right away, but I hoped that, somehow, she could feel what I was trying to say without words. "I've got you, Mom. You're not alone." A few minutes passed before my phone buzzed. It was her. My eyes filled with tears even before I opened the message, as if I already knew what it would say. I tapped the screen gently, and there it was, her reply. "Betta, I just paid the bill. Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." Just one message. Simple, humble, and yet it carried more weight than anything I'd ever received. I could imagine her at that exact moment, her tired face softening with relief, her shoulders finally relaxing after days of worry. Maybe she smiled quietly to herself, whispering a small prayer of thanks, not just for the money, but for the love behind it. I read her words again and again. The tears that had been waiting finally spilled over, rolling down my cheeks silently. I felt her gratitude in every word. But it wasn't only about paying a bill. It was about something much deeper. That one message told me how much it meant for her to know she wasn't forgotten, that even though we were miles apart, our hearts were still connected by the same invisible thread of love. Then another message came, and this one broke me completely. "You've always been my light, Betta." Even when everything else goes dark, my breath caught in my chest. Those words, so pure, so full of emotion, felt like a quiet echo from all those nights she'd spent comforting me as a child. Back then, she had been my light. She had been the one holding everything together when life kept falling apart. And now, she was saying I was hers. The circle had come full. The child she once carried was now the one helping her stand. In that moment, I realized gratitude flows both ways. She was thankful for what I had done, but I was thankful for the chance to do it. Because love doesn't just live in giving or receiving. It lives in the space between, in that quiet exchange of hearts where words become unnecessary. I sat there, phone in hand, the light from the screen reflecting off the tears on my face. My room had grown darker by then, my electricity had finally run out. But strangely, I didn't care, because in that darkness, I felt her love like a gentle glow around me. It wasn't light from a bulb. It was light from the soul. Her gratitude wasn't just about money or bills. It was about love being remembered, about bonds not fading with distance, about knowing that even when life pushes people apart, the heart always finds a way back. I realized then that every sacrifice, every small act of love, builds a bridge that nothing can break. That night, I kept her message open for a long time. The words stayed on my screen bright and warm until I finally drifted to sleep. And even in my dreams, I could still hear her voice, soft and full of peace, saying, "You've always been my light." It was more than gratitude. It was love coming back home. That night, after my mother's final message, "You've always been my light, even when everything else goes dark," I sat there for a long time, holding my phone close to my chest. Her words sank deep into my soul, leaving me both comforted and heavy-hearted. The room around me was quiet, except for the faint hum of the fan, and even that sound seemed to grow weaker as the night stretched on. I knew that by morning, my own electricity would be gone. I had paid her bill with everything I had. There was nothing left for myself. I turned off the fan to save a few hours of power, then switched off the light. Darkness filled the room, soft and still, wrapping around me like a blanket of reality. It wasn't the first time I had sat in darkness, but this time it felt different. This darkness wasn't cold. It felt peaceful, almost sacred. It was the price of love, and I had paid it willingly. As I sat there, memories of my mother's sacrifices played in my mind like an old film. Scenes I had lived, but never truly understood until now. I saw her standing in long grocery lines, counting coins twice to make sure we had enough for rice and vegetables. I saw her working late into the night, her fingers rough from years of sewing clothes for others, while she wore the same faded sari every day. I saw her pretending she wasn't hungry, pushing the last piece of bread toward me and saying, "I'm full, Beta, you eat." And now, here I was, doing what she had always done, giving quietly, without expecting anything in return. There was no applause, no recognition, no one to witness it except me and the dark. But isn't that what love truly is? A quiet, unspoken sacrifice that happens when no one is watching. I looked around my little room, the same one I had struggled to make a home out of. The fan was still now, the bulb dim, the silence was deep. But within it, I felt a strange calmness. My heart wasn't heavy with loss, it was full. I thought of my mother, her lights now glowing again. The soft hum of the refrigerator back, her face probably bathed in gentle yellow light as she made a cup of tea. The image made me smile. I could almost see her closing her eyes in relief, maybe whispering a prayer of thanks. There was a time when I believed sacrifices had to be grand to matter, that you had to give up something big for it to mean anything. But that night taught me the truth. The greatest sacrifices are often silent. They happen in small rooms, late at night, when no one knows what you've given up but your heart does. It's not about losing something. It's about giving something so that someone else doesn't have to lose theirs. As the darkness grew thicker, I lay down on my thin mattress. My body tired but my mind wide awake. My phone was beside me, its battery nearly dead, the faint light from the screen reflecting her last message. I read it once more, then let the screen go dark too. And yet, even in the pitch black, I didn't feel alone. I felt her presence, warm, steady, and full of love. I realized that this was the same kind of night she must have lived through so many times when I was a child. Nights where she sacrificed her comfort so I could have mine. Back then, I didn't see it. I was too young, too protected. But now, the roles had reversed, and I understood her in a way I never had before. The room may have been dark, but I felt illuminated, not by light but by love. My sacrifice was silent, yes, but it spoke a language only the heart could understand. I had given up a little comfort, but what I gained was far greater, a connection deeper than words, and a peace that only love could bring. That night, I didn't just sit in darkness. I became part of the quiet, beautiful light that love creates when it gives without expecting anything in return. The night passed slowly, wrapped in silence and shadow, yet my heart felt strangely bright. When I finally drifted into sleep, I dreamed of my mother's house, the lights glowing softly, the hum of life returning, her smile peaceful once again. It was as though love itself had found its way through wires and distance, carrying warmth where worry once lived. When I woke up the next morning, the first rays of sunlight peeked through my window, casting golden streaks on the wall. My electricity had gone out exactly as I knew it would. The fan was still, my phone battery nearly dead, but instead of panic, I felt gratitude. I had chosen love over comfort, and in doing so, I had learned the truest lesson of all. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the sunlight, and realized how much my understanding of life had changed overnight. All my life, I had measured success in numbers: money, bills, balance, comfort. But that night taught me that the real measure of a person's worth isn't what they keep, it's what they give, especially when giving costs something. Love isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself. It whispers through quiet sacrifices, in moments where no one is watching. When you choose to do what's right simply because your heart won't let you do otherwise. I thought of my mother again, her life a series of silent acts of love. She had spent years giving without expecting anything in return. Every meal she skipped, every night she stayed awake, every tear she wiped away without letting me see. Those were her offerings of love, invisible but eternal. And now, as her child, I understood that love is a circle. What we give always finds its way back to us, even if it takes years, even if it comes wrapped in a different kind of light. That morning, as I sat in my powerless room, I didn't feel poor. I didn't feel empty. I felt rich, in a way money could never make me. I had kept a promise I never knew I'd made, the promise to love her the way she had always loved me, selflessly, quietly, and completely. My stomach growled with hunger. The air was warm without the fan, but my heart was full. I had nothing left in my wallet, but I had everything that mattered in my soul. Sometimes life gives us moments that break us open, not to destroy us but to show us who we really are. That night was one of them. I realized that the world teaches us to chase comfort, success, and self-sufficiency, but the real joy lies in connection, in knowing that our choices can bring peace to someone else's heart. To love is to give, and to give is to live. Later that day, my mother called. Her voice was lighter, her tone full of relief. She didn't talk about the bill or the money. Instead, she asked, "Have you eaten, Betta?" That simple question made me smile. Even after all this, her first thought was still me. That's when I understood. Love isn't a transaction. It's a legacy. It passes from heart to heart, generation to generation, like an unending current of kindness. As I listened to her voice, I realized that I hadn't just helped her keep the lights on. I had kept alive something far greater. The bond between us. The story of every mother and child who have held each other through darkness, who have given and given until love became the only thing that remained. And so, the moral of it all settled quietly in my heart. Love doesn't need witnesses or wealth. It shines brightest when given in silence, when it costs something real, when it's done not out of obligation, but out of pure devotion. That night, when I sent her everything I had, I thought I was helping her. But the truth was, she was helping me, teaching me, once again, what love truly means. Love isn't found in light. Love is the light. True love isn't about grand gestures or wealth. It's about quiet, selfless sacrifice. Sometimes the greatest acts of love happen in silence, when we choose someone else's comfort over our own. Real strength lies in giving from the heart, even when you have little to give. This story reminds us that love is not measured by what we keep, but by what we're willing to give up. And that the light we bring into others' lives always finds its way back to us.